Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we are going to look into how we can add API version to ASP.NET Core Web API. So if you are new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more content on Microsoft Azure and .NET. And don't forget to also hit the notification bell so anytime we drop a new video, you may receive a notification. And thank you for joining us here today. And we are going to learn about how you can add version support into your ASP.NET Core Web API. And one thing that you need as a backend engineer or as a .NET developer is how to group your endpoint. And that is one thing that API versions help you. And imagine yourself building an application where you're going to add a support, you're going to add a new features, and you want to group them and say that, hey, at this point I added this, at this point I added this. So let's say version 1, I added endpoint that return hello world. And version 2, we added an endpoint that help us to return hello world, but it also return your name alongside. And to do this, you cannot just go to the existing controller and then or your endpoint and delete everything. It's not going to work because someone might already consuming the API. Front end or other services are already using your API. So in this case, you need to group them based on versions, and you give whoever is consuming it the time to adjust to your new changes or your new improvements. And that is one thing that versions mostly help us. So we have this simple project here, and if you don't know how to create web API with ASP.NET Core, we already have videos in this YouTube channel that you can go and look into. We deep dive on how to create web APIs, how to build everything from scratch. So there is a lot of videos. I'll add a link in the description. You can go and check them out if you want to learn how to create a project from scratch and everything here. But if you already have basic knowledge on ASP.NET Core, let's learn how we can also add version support. So I have this here, and when you check my program.cs here, this is very simple project that we have in here. There is nothing much. And then I have a model here. This is a static model. It's not doing anything. It's not talking to any database. And then we have version 2. So what we are going to do today is that we're going to have version 1 and we have version 2, so that we'll be able to, so when you check the version 1 models here, it's kind of light, right? And then when you check version 2, we are adding categories in it, right? And that is how you're going to do. So your versions, you might drop a changes or you might add changes, right? So a certain, you are going to add existing, you might add a feature or you might drop a feature. That is how API versions work. So let's say in our version 2, we might add a support of something, and in version 3, we might drop the support of something, right? So that is one thing that you might look into. So here we are saying that, hey, in version 2, we're going to add categories to these things. And then I have a controller here. What the controller is trying to do is create an instance of this. You create an instance of the product that we have created. So the version 2, and then this is the version 2. So in the namespace is using version 2 right here. So the version 2 and version 1 is not the same. So this is, let's think of this as the endpoint we have. And at this point, how do we add the versions to this thing? So in this case, we need certain packages that can help us to do that. So we can go in here and say that manage Nugget right here. And what I'm going to do is that we're going to have, first of all, we're going to install ASP.NET versions.http, right? HTTP. So let's see. So this is the package we need. So this is the first one that we need that will help us to the version support. So first of all, we need this package. So that is the first step right here. And then we need this. Instead of HTTP, we're going to say that MVC. So we say that MVC for this. And then mostly we need version, and here .NET is not here. So ASP.NET, which one do we need? We need 8.1. Okay, this is the one that we want. We're gonna install this one. So the last one we need is MVC dot API Explorer. So let's go for that one. So we need to make sure that we have the API Explorer also in here. So this is the one we need right here. I'm gonna install this one too. So now we have 3 packages installed. When we go back to our project, this is the first one. We say that, hey, it's ASP. This is the first one. The second one is the MVC, and the third one is the API Explorer. So these are the 3 packages that you need to add to your ASP.NET Core Web API to add versioning support into your API. Now, one thing that we need to also do is that before we go and learn about how query, version work, header version work, media versions work, we need to make sure to tell our program.cs that, hey, we are going to use API version support in this project. That is one thing we need to do. So to do that, we need to go ahead and have some configuration setting up for us. So this is going to be interesting. So we're going to say that builder.service, and this is how we mostly register, and say that API Explorer right here. So we probably will this is going to be API version instead, because that is the version support we are adding. So API version, and this is what we probably need. And we're gonna say that take action delegate right here. So we're gonna go ahead, and the Copilot is trying to suggest something, but this is we don't need these things. So first of all, what we need is this one. We first of all need the first one, which is saying that, hey, assume the default versions when not specified. We want to tell ASP or say that when the version is not specified, assume the versions, right? Probably gonna be version 1, because so that is what, and then report a version. So this helps us to we're gonna use a different set of API versions, right? So we have different types. When we get there, I'm gonna show you how you can add a different type way of calling for versions and everything. So the next thing that we need to is that we probably report through, and then we can see that up here what we need to do. We are not going for, so default, we need to have a default API version. I'm going to say that this is going to be a new API version, and we probably want to make sure new API version. So let's make this new API version right here, and then in here this is wrong. This is not what we want. We want API API version. So basically this is not what we want. We want this, and then we're going to say that this is going to be version 1, and we are getting an error because we need to use the package. So by default the version is version 1.0, right? So that is one thing that we are trying to set. So the next thing is that we say that, hey, the default version of this project right here is version 1.0, right? So when we get this, there is a different way of adding API, which the Copilot is making it easy for us. So there is a different way of adding. So with this API version reader help us to combine the different way of doing this. So we have the query string version reader, which is also, we have header and we have media type. And this ones, what happened is that we can then trying to specify the versions in the query string. We can also do that in the header reader. We can also do that in media type version reader. So in the query string, we can say that, hey, this is slash version 2 or version something like that, right? And that is how we're going to learn about how the string one also work. So here we probably will go ahead and add some kind of more support here, and then we're going to say that add MVC. This is one thing that we need to add, and then we're going to say that we will probably also want to add this once. So probably this is supposed to be an API Explorer. So API this one, we are doing this here, this is wrong. So API Explorer. Okay, so we want to probably group name format is supposed to be do that, and we subtract the version URL. So we are going to learn how we can use the URL to also do versions. So most of the time that is the default, and that is a simple one. We use a slash version 2, version 3 slash give me this. So this is basically the minimum setup. So this setup, we can say this is these services help us to use API version, right? So this is very simple that we have set it up here. So now let's go to the controllers and see what we can do. So one of the things that we're going to do mostly is that we're going to basically do all these versions things in our controller, which is most important thing. So we go into our controller and specify how we want the versions and everything to be used. So let's go to our version 1 controller right here, and this is how we do API. We already having this tutorial ASP.NET code. Hey, this is a web API or API controller. That is one thing we are doing, right? So the next thing we want to do is, first of all, we then can specify the version here, and this is good. This is how the string one works. So this one, right, API version using the URL, this is how basically it's gonna work, right? So you have your API version, right, v, and then you pass in your version. So you say version 1, version 2, and then the endpoint, and then they give you what you want, right? So but before we go ahead, we need to make sure that this is version 1. Right. So we're always going to specify the versions here. So this is version 1. We can go ahead and install the version. So that is quite interesting. So let's go ahead and also do the same here. So this is the same, and then we add the version 2. So what happens is that when we make a request and it's version 2, version 1, it comes here. If we are not specifying the version, it's going to be let's go here, because the default version right here is version 1. So even if you are making a request to this endpoint, so if we are not specify version, then this means that the version 1 will hit, right? So that is the default version that we have set it up. But when you specify the version, so now based on what we are doing here, we have a way of doing query string reader. So we can use query string and make a request to say, hey, give us version 1 or give us version 2, or we can use header, or we can use header media type. So we're going to do that, right? We're going to go to Postman and see how we can do that. So now we have our endpoint ready, and let's see if everything works. We can then we have Swagger configured, so we can run into the browser and check if the endpoint is there before we go into Postman and then make a request over there, right? So let's see. So mostly I prefer to use Postman to make the request, but use the Swagger to show you how those endpoints and everything works. So basically our product is working right here, and we need to configure Swagger in a way. So we need to, one thing that we can also do is that to remove the Swagger from it. We might not even need it. We're gonna use Postman completely, right? So we might not need this. So now what we need to do is that we need to do a quick recap before we even test it and to understand when we go to testing it. So what we did is that we say that, hey, the default version that we want to have is supposed to be version 1. And then with this API version reader help us to specify a different way where we can make a request. And then where we have the query string version reader here, and then we have a header version, so we can use a header and say that, hey, this is a header S version, we want to do version like this on a media type, which is going to show in Postman. And then we by default we can also use the URL one, right, which we're going to learn from from the Postman. So what happened in this controller we have in here is that we have this controller, and I'm adding this two because we want to specify, we want to perform all the action in both controllers, right? So the version 1, whenever we specify the versions, it will we indicate the request based on the version. So if version 1, the request go to the version 1, so we can specify the normal route, we can do the URL 1, which in here we specify the version. So we can do both of them in the same time, and this help me to not to do different in the version of everything. So let's run our application right here, and what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna go ahead and launch Postman. So this is Postman right here, and we have this endpoint. So basically we said that if we are not putting in any endpoint, so right now you can see I'm trying to see version 2, but if I remove this, because our default endpoint is version 1, if we are not specify any version, it's going to automatically hit version 1. So let's see. When we do that, we get a response, and then the response will get a, hey, this version is version 1 API of the API, right? So this request is then now coming from version 1 because we didn't specify any version. So let's check another way of doing it here. We can go in here, and then we probably want to use the query 1. So when you go to in here, let's go to the program.cs. So we are saying that by default, if we are not providing any API version, it's going to hit the version 1. So now let's start from this query string API version reader right here. It's mean that we can pass in a query string to get a API version. So to do that here, we can go ahead and say that API we can, to make it simple, we can even come here and copy this, because this is the query we want to pass in. We go here to Postman, we say that, hey, this is what we want to perform, and then we say that this is going to be version 1. So let's hit the request, and then we get version 1 response. So this is how we do the query right here. So you can see it's passing in the query right here to give us the response, and then we can go in here, and then we change this to 2. And then the moment we change this to 2, you say that, hey, this is coming from version 2 because this is version 2. So we make the request based yeah. So we go back, and then we get version 1. And the reason why we can make a request to all the versions the endpoint is that because of how I'm doing it. I'm trying to say that way you can do everything, and then based on the version, give me the response. So that is also way we do the query right here. So let's move to the second one, which was the header So we can also use the header to do that. So to do that, let's go to another one here. This is also a query. Let's go to this. This is the header, right? This is the header. So you go into the Postman and say, header, hey, there's version right here. I want to go and trying to say that I want this to be version 1. And then we get, say, this API response is coming from version 1. And then I can go back and say that, hey, so when we do version 2, we are expecting version 2 results, and then you see it's coming in version 2. So that is also how we do, we use the header to also do it, right? So now let's see how we can also use the media type to also do it. So in here, Postman, we can also do this through, the header again, and we say that he accept, and then we want to application JSON, and then what we specify in our program.cs. So when we come to our program.cs, you see we say that this is what we want, and that is what we are trying to specify here, and say that, hey, when we hit this is supposed to give us API version 2. When we go back and hit this is going to give us API version 1. So you see it's version 1. And one thing that we forgot to also look into is how we use the string, right? The URL, how we can also pass in through the URL. So with this one right now, the default give me version 1, but I can also go and say that, hey, the API, because when you check the controller right here, when you check the controller, we say that, hey, API v, and then we specify the version /product. It will work. So we can also pass in. This is how we do it. And mostly in web APIs, mostly this is the format you're going to go, the URL one. That is what mostly you go for. Mostly you go for it, but it's a preference and it's choices also. So I can go here and then slash here. I can say /v1 /product. And still, this give me version 1. But what the minute I change this to version 2, we get version 2 results. So you can also do it like this, and each one of them work. So these are the different way of adding API version, and how you can also making a request to get a specific version data that you want. So in our API, in this case, our API version 2 is different from version 1 because we have added categories. So you see, when we get version 2, categories are part, and when we get version 1, when we go ahead and get version 1, there is no category. So just, yeah, you can see just this. So this is how you probably do it, and it's very easy to set it up. This code is going to be available on YouTube, and you can go ahead and then also go through and then play around with this. So this is how we do it, and thank you for watching Cliff Tech, and don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel for more content on Microsoft Azure and .NET. So until I see you in the next video, bye for now.